Happy Friday, everybody. Schuyler Callihan here on Between the Eers, and I've got my guy Christopher Hall joining me today to wrap up this week as West Virginia football is in full force, but also too we've got the new head basketball coach on the men's side, Darian DeVries, who was introduced yesterday. Chris was there in attendance for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about Darian, just kind of first impressions, what we think, if this is going to work out. I'll tell you my first impression, Chris. I think and I kind of talked to you at first about this yesterday. As soon as this kind of came to an end, I was like, it seemed like he's a little nervous a little bit. But then I went back and rewatched it, and I think you're right. I think he's just anxious as all hell. Like he's ready to hit the floor or hit the ground running with this thing. It seems like he's already got 3, 4 steps ahead in this whole process. Like I feel, even though he may not have talked about it, I feel like he's got his pieces kind of already set in place in terms of his staff, which you probably always would want to have that in place when you're going and pitching yourself to a school or a team in the NBA or NFL if you're a head coach. But you want to have that kind of set in place. And I think he's kind of already got those pieces kind of set in place too, in terms of the current roster, some guys he's looking at in the portal. I think he's going to be a much further ahead along than what people expect.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought he was just anxious to be there. He looked excited to be there. Definitely not awestruck. I mean, he was at Creighton. They've been in tournaments, just went on a
Right.
6-year run at Drake with 20 plus wins. So he definitely looks eager. You can definitely see there's a different energy about him. Looks like, kind of like Neil Brown, where he's very hands on with everything, kind of like that approach to his coaching style. So yeah, I mean, whether he's going to be successful or not, I know naysayers are like, well, he's never won a national championship or whatever. And it's like, well, those odds are in your favor because West Virginia's never won it. Well, no, take that back. 1940, they have claimed the 1942 national championship, but any recent success like that, it hasn't happened. So they haven't won a Big 12
Yeah.
title. But you look at his resume, Drake was not I'm sure they think that they feel they have a proud tradition, but they didn't have a lot of 21 season. He brought that to the program. I think one of the most impressive parts about his resume is his retention, especially in this new era of the transfer portal and NIL, to get kids to stay and believe and buy in
Stay at
to what
Drake.
he's selling. Yes,
Staying at
exactly.
Drake.
So to know that he can have retention and have the backing of the Country Road Trust is definitely a move forward. But how does this all translate? We'll get more time with him, obviously, as the year goes on. But what is his defensive philosophies? If things don't work out recruiting and they have to do things in the portal, is he willing to cater to his talent, or does he stick to his beliefs? There's positives in both of those directions. So really, if he has the players' attention and and the buy and level of buying he's gotten from kids from Drake, then you would assume that it would translate at this level as well. I've said it so many times. The programs that are going to have success are going to, it's not the one and done's. Calipari has proven that time and time again. Yes, he brought NBA talent, but how many championships did he win? He was usually, West Virginia was a perfect example of that. Those were a bunch of NBA talented kids, but what you had from West Virginia was a gritty bunch that had played together for a while, and you got the best of both worlds from those kids. They got tutelage under Beeline and Huggins, so you got two very different views of the basketball world from two very good coaches, and they were because they were together so long and understood the assignment, I guess you could say. They had a lot of success, and really that's what you need at whether it's football or basketball. You need guys that play together, understand how each other the other shortcomings of each other, and how you can make up the difference from personally can you make up the difference from the right or the left. So really it's going to be interesting how this all unfolds. Whether he has success first year isn't a determination of the future. Ren Baker said it when they were going for the coaching search, that he was willing to be patient as long as they were taking the right steps. He believes in recruiting. He believes in keeping kids around. Like, yes, you can use the portal, but let's use Hunter Dickinson as an example. Was he a success at Kansas? Was that his best option for him if he was thinking to go pro? Did he take a step back this year? I'm still wondering how he got all Big 12. I feel like there was other bigs that were better than him. It was funny because I was just telling you before here how many pictures, since we're kind of transitioning right now with the website, how many pictures I went through, and probably going to share it in the coming days, but tip off with Pat Sumnick. I didn't notice it at the time that Hunter Dickinson has his arm. He's holding down Pat Sumnick at the tip off.
I've seen this.
I don't know how this is not a foul, but Sumnick still beat him to the ball. I don't know if West Virginia won the tip. I'd have to go back and look, but there's another picture of he's actually higher than Dickinson. And
He's not the most athletic human being in the world.
no, and the fact that Sumnick did what he did against him is very telling. So the portal can be deceptive, right? Hunter Dickinson was a very high value commodity. Did they pay it off? Financially, maybe. You know what I mean? Kansas basketball does make money. Do they feel they got their money's worth out of that? Talk to the NIL trust and the fans that put money into it. But you can be it's deceiving to think that you can just win by going through the portal. I don't think that's the way to success. So
No,
I think the way he's going to approach it is going to be successful, and I think the way that his approach and the kind of character kids that he wants it like this is about basketball. It is a business. You can make a business out of it, but you're not going to get success outside of basketball unless you're successful within basketball. So all that stuff is noise until you start winning. It's the same thing that talked about in football. Like, yeah, all these other schools are going to pay you to come, but that money isn't going to grow if you're not producing on the field. Like you can take your chances at, that was pre-Country Road Trust, full support from the university, but those, anytime, would LeBron James have all the endorsements if he wasn't good? Like it's kind of simple, really. Like if your success will get you endorsements. So
yeah.
getting kids to understand that is a huge obstacle. I think in this time, it's been a huge obstacle. We've seen it pre-NIL era when kids would leave early for the NBA, and they're like, "Look, there's only 32 teams in 2 rounds, and there's 300 draft picks right now. Like, you're a small sample size, and there's a lot of kids like you that are still trying to get in the NBA that's not even in this draft." So I think he has an understanding on how to communicate. Because again, to go back to the Drake retention, so I think
Now
I was
you have money to work with there too. I
right.
mean,
I
that's
was never excited about any other candidates, and it's not anything an indictment on them. It's just like to me, if you're not getting a Bill Self name, there's nothing to really be excited about. It's just optimism. Like, yeah, he had success here. Let's
and
go.
even now, the coaches like Bill Self and John Calipari, like they're kind of caught up in all this mess too because they don't know how to handle this new era. I
And you
mean,
can
they're
kind of go like that Texas route, right?
yeah,
Like they kept trying to buy coaches and like they wanted immediate success. Well, if you keep just trying to buy talent and you're just bringing a group of guys together, it's like an AAU
it's
team
not
at
going to
that
work.
point. It's an all-star team. Like it's not, you don't have the same level of buy-in because they came for the money, period.
Yeah,
So
you have to have
trying to navigate this world when, especially transfer portal, they only may get a couple meetings. And like we talk with, and Neil Brown talks like, well, this kid was in a transfer portal. Well, yeah, but we recruited him prior to him committing elsewhere. So they have a little more background. So I would assume, it's a much different landscape from Drake recruiting world to West Virginia, but I'm sure he's fully aware of the talent that's out there. And they have a great network. Rem Baker has a great network of people they can communicate with. So be very interesting to see how he kind of goes through this process, who he can retain on the current roster. Um, Tucker obviously coming is a big help to the roster, but they're going to need a lot more. We've talked about like they're going to need some bigs, right? Like they don't have any big guys right now, so
no.
be interesting to kind of see. I'm not holding him to any expectations year one or maybe even year two. I think really the process that they're trying to go through, depending on who they can really even bring in this recruiting class, because they're way behind in this recruiting class. You might have to look 3 or 4 on how they kind of manage this to where they want this basketball program to go. Obviously they want to be in the NCAA tournament. They want to compete for Big 12 regular season titles, and they want success in the Big 12 tournament. And he's shown that he can win in the postseason. So, got to have the talent. This league is extremely deep. There was talent on this team, but it never came together this past season. So, be kind of interesting to see how it works out. And if he has success immediately, I think then obviously they're ahead of schedule.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with the portal in this situation, like you said, they're behind in recruiting. So even though the search process is pretty quick. You're not going to make up that time lost with the high school kids. This is going to be a portal team in 24, 25. Like that's just the reality of it. I would expect that the makeup of next year's team is probably going to be a mix of guys that have 1 year left, that are very experienced, that can help this team compete right away. And then the other mix is going to be guys that have 2, 3, maybe even 4 years of eligibility left. If there's guys that have an injury or a red shirt or whatever the case may be, you want to have some guys that have multiple years. That way, you're not just back in the same exact position you are next year with just 1 year of high school recruiting under your belt. So you're going to have a healthy mix. My biggest thing to all these people that are complaining, because there is complainers out there, Chris. I mean, this is like it wouldn't matter who they would hire. There
No
was going to
matter
be
what,
complaints.
there's always two ends of the
There's
spectrum, so it
always.
doesn't matter.
But these people just continue to just wow me in the fact that, oh, he only coached at Drake and he's only been a head coach for 6 years. Let me tell you this. Roy Williams was not the Roy Williams you knew before he got to Carolina.
Well,
He
he was at Kansas before Carolina. So.
right, but he wasn't even that version of himself. I don't think until he got to Carolina. Mike Krzyzewski wasn't the Coach K we all knew when he arrived at Duke. Bob Huggins even he wasn't Bob Huggins until he got to Cincinnati and had his run. These coaches all started somewhere. They don't just come out in their first years of being a head coach, 5 or 6 years of being a head coach, and be Hall of Fame caliber. It takes time. And you're never going to, in this day and age, or really in any day and age at West Virginia, you're not just going to replace a Hall of Fame coach with another Hall of Fame coach. West Virginia was lucky to have one because Bob was from here. He went to WVU. And all that. He had all the connections. You're not going to just always be able to find that with particularly this kind of era of basketball or college athletics. You need to have somebody that knows how to manage a roster and develop people. And I think Darian DeVries has shown that at his time at Drake, he can do that. Again, this team was at the bottom of the MVC for years. And I believe the two of the 3 years leading up to him taking the job, they won 7 games in back-to-back years. And he turns them into a 21 program overnight. That says a lot about what he can do just like that at a place like Drake. Just think of what he can do again with the facilities, the NIL, the passion, the backing of the fan base. Just that's I think is what the ultimate, I don't know, the vision of Ren Baker is in this whole process. If he can do that there with hardly anything to work with, what can he do if you just give him a little help?
Yeah, and you talk about recruiting. I mean, prior to Huggins' incident, Cooper Flag was in the mix. West Virginia was in the mix with Cooper Flag because they opened the trust. So he's going to have the talent available to him. Doesn't mean he's going to be able to handpick his talent, obviously. But kind of to back your point, like if you wanted a coach like Bill Self, you can't afford him.
No, you
Period.
can't
Like
afford a coach like that and afford players.
to get him, to pull him away from a place like Kansas is going to take a lot of money. So you're searching for that next kind of coach, right? Like North Carolina, they've been searching for Dean Smith, and then they got Roy Williams, I think 2 coaches later.
Yeah.
And they had to pull him away from Kansas. Hubie's probably going through it right now at Carolina after their loss against Alabama. And they didn't make the tournament last year. So he's probably going through it there. That's a big tradition, traditionally a power basketball school. We know they don't like football with the evidence that their attendance at the Duke's Mayo Bowl. So they're all in on basketball. If they're not making Final Fours, they're going to be angry. And Hubie's a good coach. So you're taking your chances regardless. And just like, with Neil Brown, when they hired him, he was a proven winner. And then it's kind of got picked apart with the NIL. DeVries is a proven winner. As of right now, he's proven it. What was that, Creighton for a very long time, learned under 2 very good head coaches. And then he took what he learned throughout his life and applied his beliefs and what he wanted to do at Drake. And I think he's just on the right track. Again, it may not all work out. He may have bigger plans in mind. He may want to go coach Iowa at some point. I don't know. He played, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't really matter. What can he do, let's say, in the next 5 years? So I think that's really what's interesting. I don't know if he can, because turning it around in the mid majors, I would say is a little bit easier, even though you're kind of dealing with the same talent pool. But when you come into the Big 12, like you're adding Arizona all of a sudden,
Yeah,
Colorado, that's was just in the tournament. Um, with everybody else, like Texas and Oklahoma, really isn't a big loss to this conference considering what you're adding.
not in basketball.
It's only going to get it's only going to get harder. So at some point, um, you're going to have to get the talent, and all these high value kids that are coming out of AU that are being offered money all over the place. You're going to have to get them a level of buy-in where it's a team game. So it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. And to really try to vet those kids is a huge process because you only got what 13 scholarships available on a basketball team where it's like football, you get 85, right? So kind of going back on the Neil Brown thing when they hit the transfer portal, they have a very wide net within the area. If they miss, then they can go like, oh, all right, we have all this information on this kid. Well, basketball is not nearly the same, but there's so many kids and there's so many schools. It's probably, I want to say the numbers the same, but with all the D1 schools that are there in the NCAA, it's probably pretty close when you're kind
Yeah.
of looking at it. So it's a much shorter net. It's definitely a challenge for him to probably try to win early. I'm sure he wants to win early, especially since his son is transferring here. So they probably do have a plan in place because he wants his son to be successful. You don't want to come out in the first year with your son and have a losing season. But they will have to find some bigs. And I think that's really the challenge right now. I'm pretty sure he knows who he wants on his staff. I'm sure he's taken in considerations with guys that were here. Jake Kuntz is definitely interesting. He said his goodbye, kind of curious. Obviously, don't know anything um, right now behind the scenes with that. Maybe he thought Huggins was going to go somewhere and he wanted to stick with Huggins. But maybe he gets an offer from DeVries. Like Jay Kuntz is very good at working the portal, so you might want to sit down with him. But he may have his guy. So it's like I said, I think he may already have his staff. He says it's going to be announced in the next couple of days, and I'll be curious to see who stays with the West Virginia team. I would say the kids that weren't in attendance probably not going to be there next season, but we'll wait and see. Coaches have a way, they're salesmen at the end of the day, and they can be very persuasive, especially the young athletes, especially when you already got the trust in place. You already have some of the best facilities in the country. It shouldn't take that much persuasion to keep them in. If he wants to keep them, obviously.
You're right, and I think that's the biggest part. Was like we can't predict really what this roster is going to look like. I mean, this is you can't even say, well, here's their needs because technically their needs are everything at this point in time. I mean, you have so many question marks. You don't even know what guys are going to be here. At least we don't. I'm sure he has a general idea, but as you mentioned, they started off things on a good note with Tucker making that move to transfer over. This is a kid that I mean, most people think he can make it to the NBA. Now, is he a first round pick? Probably not. But he's someone that can definitely make a roster and hang around for a little while. So when you have that piece to build with, if you can get one of, say, Kerr Kriisa or I don't know, Noah Farrakhan, you have a solid start. Now, does that mean it's going to equate to an NCAA tournament appearance next year? Who knows? But the one thing I can say is it's not impossible that they can't make it to the tournament next year. Look what Mark Kellogg did. And I know it's the women's side, but still, he came in year one, hit the ground running, made the tournament, and look what they did, almost beating one of the top teams in the country in Iowa on their home floor in the NCAA tournament. So that thing can get turned around quickly. Should it be the expectation? I don't know. I think folks should go into this being cautiously optimistic, and as long as they see signs of progress, that's really all you can ask for in this transition. Where it's these first 2 years, you really don't know what you're going to get until he gets his types of guys in the building and he feels really comfortable with where those things at.
Yeah, like the summer will be very intriguing what they do with recruiting and how they're looking at the future. I
Yeah.
think that will be a telling sign. And right now, the roster is in complete disarray. So, yeah, you're going to get a lot of new faces. Hopefully, kids with multiple years of eligibility, probably snag some with only one season left. This is a very attractive place to play. So, it's not going to be a matter of they can't get anybody. It's a matter of who they want, how they want to build this team, to kind of start this process of building his vision of what Mountaineer basketball should be. So it's fun, it's new, it's exciting. Everyone should be excited because the guy's a winner. I mean, that's really all needs to be said. He's won. He's proven he can win as a head coach. He did it at a lower level. He went to the NCAA tournament, competed against teams in the NCAA tournament. So it's not like they were just there. They played they played at a high level. So he's getting kids that were under recruited, developing them. Now, if you can get highly recruited kids to buy in, you're going to start winning. So it's a matter of time. It's but like you always want to simulate ahead to see what it's going to look like. Yeah, I kind of wish we could do that now, just to kind of get the basketball season started. For a
Yep.
lot of people want to do that for football to get ready for
Hey,
football
I
season as
mean,
well. But
I know we're not
when
in a
something's new, you just really want to see how it's going to shake out. And um, I'm optimistic. It definitely wasn't a bad hire by any stretch of the imaginations. I don't know if you can say it's a great hire because we don't know. I mean,
yeah.
he can fall on his face in the first 3 years, and everyone is saying it's a great hire right now. But I think the choices that kind of given and the options, yeah, it's a really good hire, and I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimist about it. And it's kind of just roll with it and see what they can bring. I think the big thing is again, West Virginia is very underrated nationally of how good this program is and where it's at. I think a lot of the insiders that's been here, like Fran Fraschilla here a lot, right? Like, and you hear him say like, "Look, this is a really good basketball program, best facilities in the country, so on and so forth." So they have all the tools that they need to be successful. And when they bring kids on campus, just like they do in football, they're always blown away because they don't expect it to be as good as it really is and to compete with the blue bloods. So just bring kids in, and hey, if he can sell them on it, they may have something rather quickly.
Yeah, we'll see. I guess your record prediction 31-0 for next year.
No, absolutely not.
We are holding off on record
I'll
predictions.
say they had 31 regular season games this year. So with Tucker being, I'll be optimistic and say 18 and 13.
You're actually throwing one out there. Okay.
Yeah, I know. 18 and 13 right now. Why not? We don't even have a big yet, but we'll throw out 18 and 13. Why not?
They may be throwing you and me out there here for a couple weeks until they get the we're
They ain't
just the
got
band-aid guys to help
they're
practice move along, you know.
they're definitely not desperate by any stretch of the imagination.
So Darian DeVries, new head coach at West Virginia. That's our thoughts on it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more that comes our way with in regards to the coaching staff, transfer portal, just the whole makeup of the roster. We're going to keep tabs on all that stuff along with spring football. So we'll be back here on Monday to talk some more basketball or football. Who knows? We haven't decided what we're going to do yet. We kind of take this day by day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Mountaineers Now. Give us a thumbs up there too. And follow us on X at that same handle. For Christopher Hall, I'm Callihan. You've been watching Between Eers.